Kathryn, let's start with you. Noah Oppenheim, who wrote this incredible script, has a long history in news reporting and working with MVC, and so probably has a lot of real-world experience of working with the military and investigating. I'm just curious about the first conversations that you had that drew you into this project.
Well, thank you. And I think the most critical thing for me was the fact that he has a background in journalism. And I think of film as potentially having, occupying that space in between entertainment and information. And so it can kind of serve two purposes. And so I had this idea, what would happen if an ICBM, a nuclear ICBM, was launched toward North America? And my wonderful agent, who is somewhere here, introduced me to Noah Oppenheim, who said, well, this is a man who has basically is a subject matter expert in that space. And so we started having this conversation about what would possibly happen. And since he knows a lot of the people working at the different corporations and different halls of power, and so we began to kind of troubleshoot and think about what the scenario could be. And that's really then many conversations later, and then involving Greg, who helped us put it together, and he began to write. He's a very fast writer, but it was so, what's great is he had so many references. He knew all the people to basically source for information so we could make it as accurate and authentic as possible, which I found to be very important because of the journalistic aspect.
So we were talking outside, and I mentioned that I'd seen you on this very stage in the London Film Festival a number of years ago, and you were talking about certain sequences in earlier films. And what struck me is not just the technical virtuosity that you bring to your films, but the attention to narrative and bringing those two elements together so wonderfully. Here we have what's essentially an apocalyptic rashomon. You'll have this over the next few days as you think about this film. You start to try and figure out how the hell did you bring all this together and not repeat. Can you talk about that structure and how early on that came into play?
Well, that came about in our very first conversation because the timeline would be, and he was telling me accurately, about 18, 19 minutes, depending upon where it was launched from, thinking it would be the Pacific. So how do you, when I wanted to do it real time, so 18 minutes would be a very short movie, first of all, and maybe fine, but then putting the audience, what became really important to us was putting the audience in the position of having to make a decision that potentially catastrophic in 18 minutes, how short a period of time that is, and how the window of opportunity begins to diminish as you get to the president, who has in our country, and I believe in other countries, sole authority. There's nobody else who makes that decision except him. And at the time when he gets the information and the time is the clock is ticking down, he has like maybe 2-3 minutes to make a decision that is that profound.
Greg, you've been collaborating with Kathryn since The Hurt Locker. And it strikes me there must be so many different challenges because of the materials that you're working with. With this specific film, what did you feel was sort of the biggest challenge that you faced?
The biggest challenge, I would say, is wanting to be true to the authenticity of the subject, wanting to present the people who are involved in an honest and realistic way. It's how Kathryn leads all of her films, make you feel like you're actually there, and then creating a world. And a lot of this has to do with the whole team, with Jeremy Hendel, the production designer, and Barry Ackroyd, and the way that he shoots. The world becomes very sort of encompassing. It feels like you're stepping into an office. It feels like you're stepping into the real place, not a set. And so everything is alive and everything is electric. And the way that Barry shoots it and Kathryn shoots it creates an energy, I would say, on set. So it's always making sure that is up to a certain level.
And just thinking about the film, I first heard about it it was announced, I think, midway through last year. And no matter the relevance of the film then, it feels like every day that goes by, terrifyingly, this film is becoming more and more relevant. What was it like during production and then post of seeing the way that the world is changing and working on this?
Well, I mean, it's I suppose pretty daunting. You know, I feel like we're not getting closer to a rational situation. We're getting much further from it. And I grew up in a time when we were asked to hide under our desks in the event of an atomic bomb, which of course would do nothing. But, you know, you're too young to question it. And then realizing that between then and now, decades have passed, and there's very little awareness. I mean, I think the whole idea of nuclear weapons and being surrounded by nuclear weapons has kind of been normalized. You know, we don't worry about that. I mean, we live in a really combustible time, but yet it feels like, I don't know, there's sort of silence surrounding it. And so my thinking was it would be good to kind of bring it back, bring the idea of these weapons that are in our environment every single day, bringing it back into the public discourse. And so that was my objective. And I was so lucky to do it with these people here.
And Rebecca, I think this is the important thing with this film. Yes, it's dealing with big issues, but if we're not dealing with them on a human level, then it's something over there. And Olivia Walker is in many ways the entry point for an audience to see this world through her eyes. Now, I know you've done quite a bit of research on this, and there were a lot of advisors on set. Could you talk about having this role, seeing this role on paper, and then bringing the level of humanity that you do to the character?
Simple question, thanks. I mean, there's so many different layers to making a film. I think there's reading a script, which is my reality. Then there's talking about the script, which becomes Kathryn's reality and our reality. Then it's actually the reality of fact, right? So we had Larry Pfeiffer, who is my boss in real life. He was in the room. So I could break down actual character choices through him, whether it is, where does the email go? Which phone do I answer? Do you eat muffins? Do I have anything personal on my desk? And then I think when Noah wrote the script and started it off, I kind of had the easy part by creating the humanity at home. It was sort of set, and it made me relate to a character that later is shaped with facts, if that makes sense. But you asked what it was like filming, and I think we had fun. You know, there's a lot of fun filming this. I mean, I was making pizza toppings because I didn't know the ad lib. I had soldiers in the room. So Kathryn literally, she cast former snipers and I don't even know the rank names, but very important people with really important badges. And they would be making stuff up that were accurate to the situation. I had no idea. I would be writing like, do you want mozzarella on that? Yeah. You want to circle that and send it down? Greg, we've got that in number 2. So my point is, there's so many aspects of making a film like this. Yes, there's humanity, and that was put in the text. And then I think a bit of me came into it because it's not a character in that sense. It's a real person. And the only thing I could do was be as accurate to me as I could be. And then seeing it was the final finale of an emotion when I saw it put together and I could feel the tension and the brilliant editing and the sound. And that's when it hit. I have no idea if I answered your question.
That's good. I think that's good. We all know now that you're the person to call if we want a pizza. Tracy, it's staying with this idea of humanity because General Anthony Brady in many other films would have been an object of ridicule, of satire, caricatured in a way that we just go, yeah, it's that kind of military person. And yet what I felt I got from your performance was someone whose everyday life, their everyday job is being in this situation, and they've trained and learned everything they can to get to this point and how to react in this point. And again, it's this thing about injecting a character with humanity, and I think other actors might not have done that, but it struck me that that it's an extraordinary performance that you give playing this character. I know process is not fun to talk about, but could you talk a little bit about thinking about this character from page to screen?
It's all on the page. It is on the page. The speech that he gives is not a philosophy that I believe in. It's not the advice I think I would give in that moment, but it's a reasoned argument. It's not a madman. We had that conversation. Is this George C. Scott in Strangelove? And it's not. He's got a, I don't want to say reasonable, but there is reason behind his thinking. I could make sense of the speech. That's all you hope for, to be able to make sense of it. Beyond that, as they say, technical advisors right and left of me, 3-star generals, 4-star generals, they're in the movie. They're in uniform. They're background players in the film. And I could turn to them at any point and say, would I do this? Would I not do this? How much? The answer was usually, you can do whatever the hell you want. You're the general. But I was so impressed with those guys, too. They're such serious, sober guys. They take their job so seriously. That hierarchy is, well, it's everything in the military. It's very important in the military. And so the job, I just kept asking the question, what's the job? What am I trying to do? You're trying to gather information, collate information, pass information up the line. That's your job. We haven't mentioned it yet, but one of the things that the movie makes very clear is that the president goes through a briefing about this very topic for an hour. In the entirety of his presidency, he gets an hour. These guys at Stratcom, they drill this 400 times a year. They drill it more than once a day, every conceivable scenario. So they know what their job is. It's all about passing it to the sole authority who can make the decision whether or not we're going to launch nuclear weapons. So, I mean, that was the gig. The gig was to play this functionary fulfilling his duties, the duties of his job, and then provide a human being who's performing those functions, which, I don't know, I think the film's well cast. I think Kathryn put a lot of really good human beings in those positions.
Jonah, this idea of it is your job more than any other, arguably in the film, you have someone who has literally a sole function. But as Tracy was just saying, someone who knows their job inside out and just can recite it. I'm curious, did you actually meet anyone who carried the nuclear football?
A strike advisor is what they're called. Yeah, so I didn't get to, probably because they wouldn't let me anywhere near someone who owned it. But it was, this singular function is interesting because you never really have to do it for real. And it's kind of an interesting psychology of anyone who's in a position of responsibility who has to be very trained and professional and alert and also just there and not actually do the thing that they're most trained to do. It's also someone who, generally speaking, is of a particular ranking, like an 04 ranking, 010 being the highest. So it's someone sort of middle ranking and on the way up, because it's a position that I think is thought of as being a great honor and a responsibility, but also someone quite young, and which is explored a little bit in the film. And the president, how old are you that you're carrying around this thing that I kind of am aware of, but also he doesn't really engage with it until he has to. And I think you see in the film, particularly when they go up in the helicopter, no matter how drilled and no matter how prepared you are, the real thing is different, or at least it maybe to a younger person it feels different. And I think the humanity, the vulnerability, and even the fear starts to come through. And that was all on the page. That was just nothing I brought. That was all there already. But yeah, it was I think just thinking about what that must be like to carry this thing around all the time and knowing that you're only really going to do your most important part of your job when crisis is there. So I think that's quite
Interesting.
strange.
Barry, I want to come to you. Again, you've been working with Kathryn since The Hurt Locker. And collectively, if you look back to your work with Ken Loach and also Paul Greengrass, as well as Kathryn, you've probably done more than any other cinematographer to raise the blood levels and the blood pressure of people in the audience over the course of decades. It's funny thinking about your cinematography on Hurt Locker, because I was stunned by the stillness of so much of that film. Here we have movement. We're powering along at 90 miles an hour. Could you, again, talk about working with Kathryn and how the two of you sort of negotiate this incredible job?
But it's interesting just for you to say, because this is the still film in that we're in these confined spaces. Almost every space except for our exteriors, of course, were built inside a studio, and they were 360 degrees and skinned on the outside, so you felt completely interior. I think the idea was to give energy to that. You know, people sitting making decisions is not always that exciting, you know. But we wanted it to be exciting, but in the right proportion. So there is always silence, and there's always, I'm sure Volker will talk about that too, silence and rhythm to things. And that's what we assimilate. And having worked with Kathryn, learned so much from working with her from The Hurt Locker and onwards. It's just been, it's just a learning process. And every time we go to do it, it just feels fresh and new and makes you feel young and energetic and ready for the next day's work, and building a team who have really got that same feeling. It was a wonderful film to work on. Definitely not easy or anything like that, but it was wonderful to work on that.
How much did things adapt and change on set during the shoot, or was it all pretty sorted out beforehand what you would do?
I think it was pretty sorted out, but I will say working with Barry is just, I don't know, one of the most extraordinary experiences I've ever had. He's so uncanny, so intuitive with what the actor's going to do. He might even know before the actor knows. And then he floats from moment to moment, emotion to a moment, detail to detail, and invisibly. And then you suddenly are presented it in the cutting room, and it's just magic. It just kind of seamlessly goes together.
He's sneaky.
Yeah.
He's sneaky. He's got a lot of cameras everywhere.
You don't really know where they are. I had this moment where I break down crying, and we're not supposed to cry, and I turned my head away knowing that the camera was in Malachi, so I was safe. No, I wasn't fucking safe, because there was a cancer. Literally there.
That's a beautiful shot of the back of your head too, isn't it? But that is all the sitting important.
Everywhere.
These are the rhythms, aren't they? Yeah, and the cameras are everywhere. So
Which is nice, because we don't have to have marks. There's no marks.
Yeah, there's no marks.
it's just a method that we've evolved. I've worked on and evolved from the Ken Loach days, actually.
Yeah.
And that was just the first films I made. And then, I've tried, you try and stick to what you know best, but improve on it every day, every time, and build on it. So, it's just a pleasure. I won't say anything else bad about it.
And across all this, Volker, we have your music coming in and out. Before we talk about the music across the whole of the film, I'm just curious about the fact that we hear the music before we see anything, before we even see the credits. Mm. And I could be reaching a little too far with this, but it struck me that you give character to the actual mishap. Mm-hmm. Yeah, with that opening and that sense of horror, and it could be the opening to a horror film. Mm. Could you talk just first of all about that opening, because it is quite extraordinary, that sound.
Yeah, I mean, I was searching for a sound that is in a way taking the earth under your feet away, and I love in a way using instruments in a more, let's say, not animalistic way, but to make sounds that are like roaring and maybe guttural in a way, where you, when you hear them, you don't know what is it. Is it somebody who is singing, or is it an instrument. Is it a woodwind or is it a, you can do a lot of different sounds with instruments where you would maybe say, oh, this is a clarinet, but it's not, it's a string, it's a cello that just, does a certain sound on the string. So I do a lot of experimentations in the first place. In this case, which is happening, you read a script, and obviously when you see the first time the film, you understand that maybe the script that you read is, the content is the same thing. But when you see it the first time, and when we met the first time in New York, you see the film and you straight away think, oh, this is so real. What should I do with the music? Because I don't want to destroy any of that realism. I just want to find moments where I support a certain undercurrent emotion, or where I can help something that comes later to build. And I think, for example, that first sound is, in a way, it's establishing something that you don't see, but once the film starts, you know exactly how to anticipate. You feel already let's say the turmoil in yourself a little bit. I try to use a lot of bass for that. And what I really love, and what Barry said as well, is what you follow your own emotional instinct in a way. When I saw it, I'm in a way trying to follow where I feel sad and where I feel, for example, tension, and I just try that out. If you have someone like Kathryn who just lets you do what you want to do, and is not like micromanaging things, because once that is happening, suddenly you start to go into service mode. You reduce your ambition, and that was so wonderful that we could work. I could work that way, and obviously I hear from everyone that this was one of the good things about the film, and you can sense that when you see the film. You see the energy rising somehow together. I love that.
I think almost everything was completely surprising. I had no idea that the president had sole authority, and he had a matter of minutes. And then doing a little more digging, the human brain actually is not capable of making a decision that complex, apparently, in such a short period of time. So you've got the decision time. You have I don't know. It's also frightening and overwhelming. But you have these people who are incredibly. I mean, they have these jobs that are actually quite thankless. They work 24/7 to keep us safe, which clearly have been successful because we're here having this conversation. But yet, it's incredibly, incredibly fragile. We live in this combustible environment. We do live in a house of dynamite, and my hope would be someday to have a conversation about reducing the nuclear stockpile. But there's over 12,000 nuclear weapons, apparently, if that is an accurate count, in the world. 9 nuclear countries, and only 3 are members of NATO. So it's a fairly combustible environment. And then the ground-based interceptor, and how much the percentage of accuracy. I don't know. It's a Hail Mary pass. Clearly, it looks like to me, but maybe it's much more accurate than we were led to believe. And the other one that's most predominant is what Jonah mentioned earlier, that the president is perhaps given a rehearsal of all this information and what would happen maybe once. Noah and I spoke to a former chief of staff at the Pentagon, and we said, okay, so how many times a year do you rehearse this so you know what you're doing? They said, maybe once. They're busy. They're negotiating for hostages or whatever. So if that doesn't make you nervous, no, I'm not trying to make you produce. I think there's a conversation. There's a conversation that we could have at some point. Well, a couple of things. One is we needed to be driving distance from Raven Rock, which is the nuclear bunker, and that's in Pennsylvania, and so it had to be somewhat proximate to wherever she lived, which is some outside of D.C. And so we did some research, and we realized that they were doing this reenactment July 6th and 7th. I think I'll never forget those dates because we had only just put the crew together maybe a week before. And so I said to Barry, I said, what about shooting the reenactment? He said, what? No, but he was totally game. Everybody was game. And Greg, I mean, I don't know, it was guerrilla filmmaking. We just got there and we're just shooting it like a documentary, basically. We can't set it up. That is the reenactment that they do. And so we're just trying to be in the right place and not get mowed down by a wall of horses. And then Greta Lee, amount of dialogue that she had to give and be prepared for in about, I don't know, a half a day. I mean, it was...
Wildlife cannons are going off.
Yes, well, cannons are going off. And then Gabriel, who plays the Deputy National Security Advisor, Jake Barrington, he lives in Tennessee, and we said, could you just be on the other end of the phone call with her when the president and you call her? He says, no, I'll be there. Mm-hmm. And so he drove up, and he was there off camera. Anyway, it was kind of one of those great moments in filmmaking when everybody, it's like a fire drill. We just all did it.
Yeah, put it together.
Pulled it together.
Yeah, it was good.
And there's Barry out, and the cannons are going off, and he's there. It's just
Being told not to get in front of the cannons, and when yeah. But yeah, it's a good shot, isn't it?
You're right.
But we do it safely. I promise you.
You missed that one, Tracy.
Also, to your point about Lincoln, this struck me when I first watched the movie. I thought of Lincoln in terms of lineage of American presidents, but then watching it the second time, I realized, oh, who cares about the lineage of American presidents? It's all gone. It's all gone, right? What difference does any American president make if it's the end of civilization? And I think in addition to Kathryn, I think some other artists are starting to explore this idea. What does it mean? What does it mean if we just start to unwind all this and we're done? And we're really done.
Stacey, I feel I should give you my mic to drop off stage. This film, as Kimberly said at the start, is now showing in cinemas. As you've experienced it this afternoon, please tell people to go and see this film in a cinema. It's an extraordinary experience. If people can't see it in cinemas, they can see it on Netflix from the 24th of October. I will also say that Tracy Letts has his play, Mary Page Marlowe, shown down the road in the Old Vic. And that is on until the 1st of November, and there are some tickets left, so please do book your tickets for that. Thank you. My pleasure. You can pay today. Thank you so much to Netflix. Thank you very much to the BFI for helping to organize this event, but most of all, can you please join me in thanking our guests today?